Mr. Ranjan. Thank you so much for joining with us. One of the finest minds amongst policymakers and a person who has led blockchain policy initiatives in the state of Telangana, which has received national and global appreciation. We will be conversing with Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Principal Secretary, Industry and Commerce and IT, Government of Telangana. Mr. Ranjan is a member of the Indian Administrative Services of the 1992 batch and a All India topper merit in that. He holds a master's degree in psychology from Delhi University, a degree in business management from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and a master's in public management from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. Mr. Ranjan has several outstanding achievements and initiatives to his credit. And amongst his several distinctions, he was awarded the Royal Order of the Polar Star by His Majesty, the King of Sweden in 2019. Very recently, Mr. Ranjan was conferred with honorary doctorate degree for his outstanding contribution to the development of collaborative relationship between India and Manchester, particularly in the technology sector. The fire chat. Well, this fire chat will be moderated by Mr. Pankaj Dewan. So please help me welcome them on the stage with a huge round of applause.
First of all, let me for taking your time and being on time as you promised. We have a lot of questions, and blockchain being a topic where Telangana government has made such huge strides, people look upon you to give a overarching view of how government and policy makers are looking at blockchain. Plus, what are the kind of enabling things that startups can look forward to. So I'll go around the questions based on some research that we have done and some of the questions we have got online and offline from the audience here, sir. I'd also like to acknowledge the audience here because you always talk about the interest in Web 3.0. So you would be surprised we had more than 450 registrations, and yesterday we had to actually request people to go online and request only few to join here. So we have about 120 people who have joined here today offline and about 400 plus people who have joined online. So they're all listening to this conversation. So with this, let me get started off and probably request you to talk a little about the idea of T-Hub itself, because this is a world-class facility. Now, the world's largest innovation campus. I'm sure everyone who has come here, many of them are also first-timers to T-Hub, perhaps, version of T-Hub. We would want you to talk a little about this thought process. What is the idea of T-Hub?
No, sure. Thank you, Pankaj, and greetings to all of you. But before I tell you about T-Hub, when you mentioned that you drove people away, you told them to stay away. I suspect that I'd asked some of my colleagues also to come, but I don't see them anywhere. So I guess they have taken your message seriously. Maurya and someone is there? Okay, a couple of people are there. Actually, I invited them on purpose because it's very interesting the Web community, and I told them to come here, understand from them what do they expect, what do they require. So happy that two of them are there, but they are occupying the back benches. So I don't know, maybe they are doing it on purpose to avoid me. So no. So to back to this question of T-Hub, it has a very interesting story. In fact, I've told this story on many times, so some of you may be familiar with this, but this whole business has a very interesting beginning. See, what happened was that 8 years ago, when the state came into being in 2014, our minister, many of you would know, most of you would know that he's a person with very progressive kind of thoughts and person who is immediately keen to get into action. So within days of he becoming the minister, he conducted a session in ISB. He called lots of faculty members from ISB, digital IT, some other intellectuals, some domain experts to ask them, see as possibly some of you would know, the reason why there was a demand to create a separate state of Telangana was the sense of relative deprivation. When you were a part of the combined Andhra Pradesh, this region was not getting the kind of attention, the resources. There was a sense of deprivation. And therefore, for decades, this demand to have a separate state was carried out. And eventually, in 2014, on June 2nd, this demand was met. So when we conducted that roundtable kind of session, it actually had a nice title. It was called Envision Telangana. And the question which was posed was, see, the minister also used a very evocative phrase. So the question that he posed was that, see, we have missed out on developmental opportunities for so many decades. And how do we now? And then he used a very interesting phrase. See, typically, if you have to do something fast, you talk about how do you fast track, or sometimes if you have to do with even more sense of urgency, you mention how do you leapfrog. But he used a third expression. He did not say fast track. He did not say leapfrog. He used a third expression, pole vault. How do you pole vault Telangana to catch up for all the lost opportunities? So pole vault as you're right. So this was the question which was posed, and two kind of answers came from all the experts who were gathered there. One of them, I mean, one answer was that technology should be the major enabler for Telangana. The state should become a technology-enabled state, and that will help you this fast track or leapfrog or pole vault very, very quickly. But the second message was even more important. The second message was that most of the important technology breakthroughs, technology solutions, which have a very far-reaching impact, they are all coming from the world of startups. So the state should look at startups to get those technology solutions. And then, so that message was very well received, that we should work with startups, we should encourage them, we should embrace them. So at that time, this is way back in 2014, 8 years ago, Telangana was not a very known hub for startup activities the way it has become today. There were two incubators, actually three incubators in the city at that time. One was in ISB called the D Labs, which many of you would be familiar with. One was in Triple IT, which is the CIE, and the third was in the Genome Valley called the IKP. So just three incubators and about maybe 100 or so startups at that point in time. So Minister asked us that please gather some of those startups to understand how do we help them, what do we do to encourage them. And when we had that interaction, in fact, something else also happened very interesting. So so it was a session like this. This happened at Triple IT. Mr. Srinivas Kolipara was the coordinator of the CIE at that time. So he had rounded up some 30, 40 people, 30, 40 startups. And the minister and I were sitting like this. The startups were there. And the minister asked a question that, what do you want the government to do for you? And you will not believe it. The common answer was that if you stay away from us, that is the biggest help that you can do. So, of course, it's not very difficult to understand where this kind of answer comes from. I think the blame for these kind of answer goes to the IT industry. The IT industry claims that they have reached the commanding heights today because the government stayed away. Autonomy was given, which is only partially true. They received lots of favors. The biggest favor which the IT industry received from the government was a tax-free status. For 20 years, you don't pay any tax for anything. So that's not a very easy decision to take. In a country like ours, to tell that you don't need to pay any tax for 20 years is a big thing. But they don't acknowledge it. They say that the government stayed away, therefore, which is also partly true. Because when they say that the government should stay away, the thinking is that the government should not get into this micromanagement, over-regulation. You do whatever help you can, but don't get into small. Many times governments get into unnecessary things. So the minister clarified that our interest is not to do any micromanagement, any over-regulation. Then he rephrased the question. The question he asked was that what are your pain points which you think that the government can solve? And so once the question was rephrased like this, many answers came. One of the answer was, which is the genesis of T-Hub, many startups told us that, see, all of us know when we look around, we see what's happening in this area. This is the Cyberabad area. So many startups told us that we would like to be in Cyberabad where the action is, but the rentals are too high here. The rentals are just not affordable to us because obviously we are at a very early stage. We don't have budgets to pay. In those days, it was 50 rupees per square feet, 45 rupees per square feet. And therefore, we are pushed to, let's say, a Begumpet or a Sikandrabad or Jubilee Hills or wherever they are. So that kind of instigated the minister that, okay, let us create a facility, a large facility where we can offer reasonably priced space, affordable space, so to say, where the startups can work. So the initiation of T-Hub was more like a facility where you can offer lower rent or an affordable rent real estate. But then, and therefore, at that point in time, looking at the references around us, we decided to build a 70,000 square facility, which itself was quite large in those days. For many years, till the one in Orissa overtook it, it was treated as the largest tech incubator in India. But then we also realized that there's a huge appetite for in the startup community for not just the there. All of us now know that T-Hub's reputation is built not because of the architecture of the building or the interiors and all that, but because of what happens inside that building. And now we have moved to a second facility, which is this. And as you can see from yourself, this 5 times bigger than that. So this facility, which should be driven using technology, start to be the source of the technology, which should actively engage with startups. It should actively engage with startups. It should create facilities which are so we did 2-3 things. Of course, we invested money in building the T-Hub phase 1 and this huge building that you are in right now. But we also have come up with a very progressive startup policy. Many of those ideas came in that small interaction which we had in Triple IT, where they told us about their pain points. So after we returned from that interaction, the clear message which the minister told us was that, see, typically when you are writing a policy, policies are written in India in a very kind of aspirational kind of way, very motherhood kind of statements that I'll achieve the moon, I'll achieve the sun. But nothing actually happens on the ground because these are not action oriented kind of aspirations. Of course, they're written in good English, very flowery kind of language. In olden days, they used to be printed also. They would be printed on glossy paper. So it'll look very nice. It'll read very nice. But obviously nothing would happen after the policy was written. So he made it very clear to us that don't write those kind of, it's not an English, it's not an essay writing competition that you are participating in. You have to find solutions to the problems which they mentioned there and ensure that every pain point gets answered in that policy document. So if you see the startup policy of the state, it's a small document, maybe 10, 12 pages, but every sentence in that document leads to some action, and that action solves the pain points of the people. And obviously one of the pain points was not able to access space, not able to get quality incubation program, not able to find appropriate mentors, not able to link up with all these great institutions which are around, not able to find the first customer, not able to get access to data. All these challenges, pain points which you mentioned, everything is answered in the policy.
I think, like the minister always says, Telangana is the startup state. So I think that startup DNA was there all through in this thought process also. So let's dive into the topic on hand today, which is blockchain. And again, Telangana government has been on the forefront of adopting blockchain, coming up with blockchain policy initiatives like blockchain district. And this is well before a lot of other states talked about it or thought about it. So we want you to take us through the journey of the blockchain initiatives in the state. And yesterday you gave us a little hint about some announcement which is going to be made today. So I also request you to talk a little about that as well and guide us.
So this looks like a very short interview with just 2 questions. Okay, because what you have asked me, I'll complete everything, and I don't think you'll require to ask me anything else.
That's fine, because the audience is here to listen to you, not to me.
Oh, okay. All right. But anyway, so again, the genesis of supporting emerging technologies like blockchain came again from that same origin. The message that we got that we should embrace technology, we should embrace startups who bring those technologies. So again, as a government, this is something very novel and very unique, that we created a wing in our IT department whose job was to exclusively focus on emerging technologies. And all this is way back in 2014. So we created a team, and Rama Devi Garu, who heads that emerging technology wing, she's not here today. I had asked her also to come, but fortunately her colleagues are here. So this is a wing which identifies which are the technologies which have greater potential to actually solve or provide solutions to some of the pain points of the common person, and who are using those technologies, what are the use cases elsewhere in the world. So in 2014 itself, we had identified 8 such emerging technologies. Of course, AI is something which is very prominent today. In 2014 also, it was beginning to show its prowess. So AI was one, but blockchain was the other one, which we had identified. And in those days, again in 2014, the clarity that we have on blockchain today was not that clear. In fact, as all of us would know, the understanding of blockchain was very much related to crypto, that you can have an alternate way of dealing with your financial transactions, which is digital, which is easy to operate. But immediately thereafter, once we decided we'll get into blockchain, lots of controversies started, like trading in crypto, the valuations, and some people losing their money when the valuations go down and things like that. Became very speculative. Then Reserve Bank started commenting on it, dissuading governments from getting into this kind of activity, and they, for some reason, they're still maintaining that stand that we should be very wary of crypto. So I'm not taking any stand on that. This is what the Reserve Bank stand was. But then when we started understanding the way blockchain and crypto are getting linked together, we felt that we can disaggregate it. Let the crypto path be followed as per national regulations, because states don't have any flexibility in deciding that they will support crypto or they will ban crypto, etc. On the technology part, states have complete autonomy to adopt it in whichever way we would like to do. So what we do is that for every piece of technology that we are interested in working on, we do 3 things. One is that we announce a policy or a framework which makes it very known and very public and very explicit what responsibilities will the government take. So what is going to be our role, and what roles do we expect from our stakeholders. For example, what roles will be played by the private companies, what roles will be played by the academic institutions, what role will be played by, let us say, some collaborator from Government of India or some international institution, and what roles will be played by the startup. So that document is there. So our blockchain framework or the blockchain policy, as you call it, again, is something, and we prepare all these documents through lots of bottoms up kind of research. It's not a ambitious, top driven kind of a document. We understand very thoroughly what the community is expecting, stakeholders are expecting, and then provide that in the policy. The second very important thing is, and you can see it everywhere. You can see it in T-Hub. You can see it in other institutions like T-Works, T-Hub, Task, Rich, etc. That we create an institution which takes responsibility for it. So the institution which has been created to implement our blockchain programs is called Blockchain District. And I guess in the morning, someone spoke about the Blockchain District. It happened, isn't it? People are aware about Blockchain District. No, so it's an institutional, it's governance arrangement. It's an institutional arrangement. So the founding partners when we launched our blockchain programs were a couple of private organizations, a couple of academic institutions, a couple of Government of India institutions. So all of them have got together to create what is called a blockchain district with a proper governance structure. There is a person who is the coordinator. There are people who represent these institutions in that blockchain district. Governance happens through that district. And the third very important thing, which I already alluded to, is the fact that to run all these institutions, we bring talent, the best talent that is available. We are never, right from day one, we have never been under any illusion that the government itself is full of talent. In fact, we are very clear in our minds that far superior talent is outside the government rather than inside the government. And you will not believe it, but at least in my two portfolios, I look after the IT and the industries portfolios in the government. In these two portfolios that I handle, close to 350 people have been recruited from the open market who work for us. And these are the people who have been recruited based on their ability, their talent. So when I told you that two of my colleagues are here, also not regular government employees. They are people whom we have recruited. They're one of the 350 people. So this again is very reformative kind of thought process, that you recognize that government has limitations. Government should stay away from micromanagement. Government should yield space to better talent which is available outside. This is the genesis of how we have started doing blockchain programs. And when you see the blockchain policy, or for that matter any other policy that we bring out, one of the commitments that we put right up front is the government will lead from example. So the earliest adoption of blockchain cases will happen in the government itself. And again, I feel very proud to share with you that since 2016, when the policy first came out, and today, or 2017 rather, 2017 and today, that is 2022, 5 years, we would have tried out at least 2 dozen plus use cases in the government. And some of them are very, very significant. I was speaking in a kind of in an event yesterday. Many of you were there, but not all were there. So I can repeat that example. One of the latest initiatives of ours, we have not publicized it extensively, but we are writing papers on it and will publish it in academic journals and also in a public kind of media, is about remote voting. See, many of us lament that when elections happen, the voting percentage is so low, voter turnout is low. We talk about voter apathy, that people are not connected with democracy, and all kinds of noises are made and all. But whatever could be the reason, one of the basic fundamental reasons is the sheer inconvenience of the voting process. You don't know where your name is. You struggle to find out polling station. You go there. There's no kind of organized system. You stand in long queues, and sometimes at the end of it, you are not even allowed to vote. So all kinds of complications happen on the election day, election for the first time in a live kind of a scenario in a town called Khammam in Telangana, a reasonably sized town, a municipal town that is. How can one do voting by sitting at your home? So we have been able to showcase how the voter is identified. See, typically when a regular vote happens, in-person voting that is, lots of contentious issues are raised. For example, impersonation is a very big thing. Like you are not you are voting for someone else. Then your voter ID card, your photograph, all these things are matched. There are some agents who are available there, polling agents. They challenge you if they feel that you are someone else. Similarly, you would have noticed this, that lots of doubts are raised about the electronic voting machines, EVMs. And I have seen this so many times, and in some sense it is very ridiculous also, that when a party loses the election, the first blame is put on faulty EVMs, like someone has tampered with the EVMs, and typically say that the ruling party has tampered. Whoever loses, the easiest excuse is to say that I would have won, but they have configured the EVMs in such a way that whatever button I press, all votes are going to this person only, which is blatantly untrue. And some of you may know this, that these EVMs are actually made in Hyderabad. They're configured in Hyderabad. I have actually been to their factory. I mean, it's not a factory. It's a, let's have been to their office, the Electronic Corporation of India, ECIL, and I've seen, they have demonstrated to me how robust the whole system is, how it is literally tamper proof and all that. So when you are doing remote voting, these kind of allegations, these kind of doubts multiply many-fold. See, you can't even see who is voting from where. So we have been able to allay all these doubts, apprehensions to showcase how voter is identified, for which he used a facial recognition technology with a very strong AI algorithm. And we were able to show how the votes will be kept secured till the counting happens by using blockchain. So this is an example where we have been, in a way, able to demonstrate a very strong and a very solid application of technology in a very, very charged and complicated context. See, when many of us, most of us are technologists, so sometimes we don't understand the social context, but many times there's an interplay between the technology and society, technology and social context. And this is a very good exemplar of that. And obviously, all of us understand the dynamics around voting. Everything can be questioned, everything can be doubted, everything can be blamed. But we have been able to show a situation where nothing of that sort can happen. So it's a very big achievement. And as I said, it has happened because of the application of blockchain. There have been other examples also. This is not the only one. As I told, there are more than 2 dozen use cases. Many use cases today are common across the country. Educational certificates, securing them on blockchain. Many states do that. We have also done it. Land records, because in the land records also, lots of hera-fairy takes place. Many of you would be familiar with that. In fact, I don't know if it is just a rumor or if there is any truth in it, but in our bureaucracy, this example is often quoted that someone once even sold the Charminar, showing that it belongs to him, and some gullible person from, I think, Dubai or somewhere, he thought that he's going to own a good property in Hyderabad. So obviously all this happens because the land records are not secure, hera-fairy happens. So this is again a very good example. Yesterday, again in that same event where I spoke, I gave the example of chit funds. I don't know whether anyone from chitmunks are here or not. Okay, so they are the ones, yeah, I can see him. So they really attempted something which is very, very bold. See, all of you would be familiar that there is an informal credit system, credit and loaning system, which is called chit funds. And they are popular all over the country. Throughout the country, people subscribe to chits. And it's an extremely messy system, extremely non-transparent. In a state like West Bengal, there's a huge scam which has broken out. It is called the Sharada scam. And at one point, there was even a very real threat that the whole government will come down because of that kind of scam. But it is not to say that scams are happening only in West Bengal. I guess because of the loose kind of way in which chit funds are organized, scam potentially can happen anywhere, and possibly they're happening in many other places as well. So using a application, again, blockchain-based application called T-Chits, we have been able to streamline the way chit funds are administered, and it has helped in multiple ways. The transparency has come, the ability to have control over the auditing and accounting, etc. How much money is coming, how much you have to pay to whom. All that has become very, very transparent. 2, 3 other very good use cases are there. Here, of course, in all these 3 cases that I spoke about, the land records, the educational certificate, educational certificate, prevent a mischief, some scams to not happen, some fraud to not take place. But there are positive ways also of utilizing blockchain, and I feel very happy. I don't see him. Yesterday he was there, Sid from Stratwick, but I don't think he's here today, or I can't notice if he's here or not. But they have done something for us. This is to improve the credit worthiness of self-help groups, self-help group members. See, some of you may not know this, but in many states in the country, poor women who live in rural areas are organized into self-help groups. And the groups are expected to do regular credit and thrift activities based on which they get some credit worthiness score, and then they receive loans from the banks. And then they repay, they get more loans and things like that. So this system currently is at the aggregate level, that is at the group level. Like individual members, they are not able to still you fail to do the scoring. Group loan eventually gets distributed to the members repay it, then they get back. And obviously there'll be variation. Some members will more prompt, some members will be less prompt. But when you are aggregating everything, this variation gets kind of covered up. So with the help of StatWeek, we are now trying to figure out credit worthiness of an individual member. So your group may receive loans, you may receive more loans than others because you are much more disciplined and punctual in your credit and savings habits. So again, a solution is coming from StatWeek. We when we talk about fraud, etc., there is something else also which we know that Hyderabad is a very important center for the pharmaceutical industry. And while the industry is doing well, it is really thriving. But one very, very unhappy or a very unpleasant kind of thing which has entered into the system is the manufacturing and sale and distribution of fake medicines, spurious medicines. And in some cases, I mean, in practically all the cases, these things can be very, very fatal. I take a medicine with the belief that it is a genuine medicine, but it's a fake medicine. It can kill me also, potentially. So we have again taken the help of a blockchain startup to work out the traceability mechanism of how the medicine has been produced or manufactured, how it has come into the market, and so on and so forth. Another very good use case that we have is called vehicle lifecycle management, where the entire journey of a car, right from the time it is manufactured in a factory, because we noticed, in fact, the transport department told us that there are lots of leakages, revenues which ought to come to them. They don't come when particularly the first or the second transfer happens. I bought the car from the factory, but then I sold it to you and you sold to someone else. The transport department is expected to get higher registration when the second sales happen, but that is concealed. No one admits that I'm buying a second-hand car, etc. So now using this vehicle life cycle management, the revenues will improve and obviously mischief and fraud will come down. So there are many, many such examples, and all these are coming again from the very avowed announcement which we have made in our policy that the government will be leader in adoption. We will lead by example, and then enterprises and everyone else is welcome to also encourage blockchain providers to do so.
Amazing, sir. I think I'm sure a lot of people have experienced all these use cases, have been part of it in some way. For people who have not known this, I think it's been amazing to hear all these use cases from you and the kind of adoption government has done. So before you make that big announcement, there are a couple of questions which the audience has asked. I may take your permission to ask those questions, and you can decide to. So, what is it? Yes, yes, I just. So taking from the point that you mentioned of Charminar, right? While it's a joke that Charminar was sold, today it's practically possible to sell Charminar, perhaps as an NFT, without actually selling the real Charminar. And that is where a lot of startups want to know what is the clarity in policy in terms of being a more nuanced approach in crypto versus tokens versus NFTs. So you don't have to take a official stance, sir. I mean, I leave it to you, but I just want to, and the audience here wants to know both from a state level and at a national level, because you are in touch with all the policymakers all the time. You've also been part of the national blockchain policy, which was released, blockchain standards, which was released. So a lot of startups here are in very confused state as to how do they go forward. So I'm sure you understood the question. Request you to dwell on that.
So first of all, I should admit that our confusion is not any less. We are equally confused. But to come out of that confusion, we are doing something very important, very significant. And that was the big announcement I was planning to make. So I'm glad that you led me to make that announcement. So there is still regulatory ambiguity. Actually, what gave us this idea was that Minister and I were in Davos attending the World Economic Forum in May, just a couple of months ago. And we met a very prominent VC. It's a global VC, but they claim that 45 of the 100 unicorns have been supported. And it's not a wrong claim. I mean, it's all well documented. So we met their top brass, and then they told us something, that we are very keen to fund startups in this domain. But unfortunately, all the startups in this domain, once they mature, are either going to Dubai or to Singapore. So we engage them on this conversation. Why is it? Why do you think that beginning in India? They can go anywhere. They can be Bangalore. They can be, Gurgaon or wherever. But why are they leaving India? Why should they do that? And then those gentlemen told us that it is because of the ambiguity, uncertainty. They are not sure that if they go ahead in this way, something else will not fall on them. And therefore, to play safe, they're going to these places where there's much more stability of regulation, clarity on regulation, predictability more than anything else of regulation. So at that instant moment itself, we decided that we will help in clearing this confusion, clearing this ambiguity. So the announcement that I'm making is that we are setting up. I unfortunately I'm not able to give you a precise date, but as soon as possible, we are setting up a regulatory sandbox on Web 3.0, NFT, etc. And so the sandbox, as all of you would know, is a place where you are given access to data, mentors are provided, domain experts are associated with you, and whichever domain that you want to work in, we understand fully what are the existing regulations. If you are pushing the boundary in some particular regulation, who needs to approve that? So we get you all those approvals. As a government, it's not your kind of responsibility to run around. And of course, if you're coming with something which is of relevance to the government, we help you in adoption, in scaling up, and all those things. But as I said, like anything else and like everything else, we want the composition of this regulatory sandbox, the governance structures, what will we deliver, what will we call for. It should all be discussed in a larger forum, and based on your inputs and suggestions, etc., we will create it. It's again not going to be a top-down kind of a wishful thing, which we have never done, and in this instant case also, we will not do. And so that is the reason why I asked my colleagues to come here to talk to people in the breaks and networking sessions, etc. So do let us know over a next few days, what do you expect, what are the pain points that you are facing, what are the challenges you are facing, so that when we create this, we create something which addresses all your doubts and concerns and challenges. We also know that in certain areas, I mentioned this already, the state's powers are kind of constrained and the national agencies powers are more. So we want to play an important role in all these things. So we want to actually create this sandbox with tacit approval of RBI. So their arm here is the IBRDT, as all of us know. So we will be discussing with them how would they like the the governance, etc., of this regulatory sandbox. Two of the VC firms have shown interest in actually becoming a part of that regulatory sandbox and supporting it. One is the same VC whom we met Davos. Other is a Hyderabad based VC, but again a VC which has recently secured a dedicated amount of fund, and it's a very attractive fund to support people in this Web 3.0, NFT, crypto, etc. So we can expect that this experiment, which will of course be continued for minimum 2 to 3 years, will help us not just as a state but as a country to improve the levels of regulation, to be more business friendly. But at the same time, so when I say that there is a pushback from the Reserve Bank, there is a pushback for some reasons which look to be valid. So we also need to ensure that there are adequate checks, balances, no one misuses, no one, uh, kind of makes, they just play with the law, etc. So all those things will be there. But within those legally accepted boundaries, we should hope for a very smooth passage. And just as we have seen mushrooming of blockchain adoption or AI adoption or IoT adoption, etc., etc., we hopefully will lead this community, the Web 3.0 community, in the same path. Because the fundamental objective of Web 3.0 is very, very important. I mean, that is very relevant, very important, and in keeping with the modern ethos of the world, that things should be democratized, things should be decentralized. No one should hold any monopoly over the usage of internet, etc., etc.
So I think you gave us more than what we would have ever wished for. Can we have a huge round of applause? I mean, this is going to be as big moment or bigger moment than the initial blockchain policy or anything that has been announced. And I'm sure people outside our state also are going to be very encouraged with this, because this sets a precedence for other governments also to engage, for other governments also to start thinking on these lines and engage with this sandbox that you're talking about. Thank you so much for this. There were a lot of questions, but I think this one point answers most of those questions in principle. And like you rightly mentioned, it's a sandbox, which is a test bed. So obviously, people have to come with their views, suggestions, applications, and then it'll go through its process of validation. But I think you have set that stage and set that framework. So thank you so much. I think it couldn't have been a better day for Web 3.0 than this kind of statement. I'm telling this with all genuinity, sir. Yesterday, there were very hectic messages and calls that I got from some of the NFT companies and others. And they said, can you just word to Jayesh sir and ask him, can government take a more nuanced stand, crypto versus NFT versus this, and all this answers all their queries. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this thing. So we can go on you, and the way you talk blockchain, I'm sure a lot of people who call themselves blockchain experts must be wondering, should they come for a 101 tutorial from you on blockchain? So I think amazing clarity and amazing articulation with which you talk about blockchain, sir. Thank you so much for your time.